Women of the Civil War by Joan Nichols. The Abolitionists. Some women were abolitionists before the Civil War even began. They wrote against slavery and spoke out in public speeches. Sarah and Angelina Grimke were abolitionists who came from a family of wealthy slave owners in South Carolina. Yet they always believed all people were created equal. The Grimke sisters moved to the North and spoke out against slavery. The sisters were criticized by many people who believed that women should not give speeches in public. Other people admired these former slave owners who spoke out so strongly against slavery. Sojourner Truth was born an enslaved person. She was tall, intelligent, and had a strong voice. When she spoke about her own experience at anti-slavery meetings, listeners were drawn to her powerful speaking. Two Harriets. Harriet Beecher Stowe was born in 1811 in Connecticut, which was a free state. In 1832, she moved to Ohio, which was also a free state at that time. Here, Stowe learned about slavery and enslaved people who escaped to freedom. She heard about a young African-American woman who carried her baby across the river when it was covered with ice. Stowe used this story when she wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. Her book made readers see enslaved people as fellow human beings. Most abolitionists spoke in public and wrote books to fight slavery. Harriet Tubman risked her own life and freedom to help enslaved people escape. She traveled south 18 times, leading people north to freedom. Slave owners offered a large reward for her capture, but she was never caught. The War at Home. After the South seceded from the Union in 1861, the fighting started. Women worked hard and acted with courage, defending their homes and supporting the cause in which they believed. Because most men in the North and South joined the Army or were called up by the draft, women had to run the farms and businesses. Times were hard and there was a lack of food and clothing, especially in the South. Poor women went to work to support their families. Women also sent the soldiers blankets, sheets, towels, and food. Nurses. More than 2,000 women served as nurses during the Civil War. Ellen McCormick Luby and her 4-year-old son traveled from New York to Virginia to nurse her husband. She continued serving as a nurse in the same hospital until the war ended. Clara Barton. Clara Barton decided to ask people to send her food and medical supplies for Union soldiers. Friends helped her deliver them to the battlefields. She also helped find missing soldiers and helped their families contact them. Later, she founded the American Red Cross. Sally Louisa Tompkins. Sally Louisa Tompkins opened a hospital in a friend's house in Richmond, Virginia. She used her own money to run it. Because the wounded soldiers got better, the Army made her a captain. From then on, she was called Captain Sally. A writer and nurse. The book Little Women takes place during the Civil War. Louisa May Alcott wrote it. In 1862, she went to Washington, D.C., to help take care of wounded soldiers. A month later, Alcott got sick and had to return home. She wrote about her experiences in a book called Hospital Sketches. Laundress, teacher, nurse. Susie King Taylor was born an enslaved person, but she learned how to read and write. When she was 14, she was freed by Union troops before slavery ended. She married Sergeant Edward King, a member of the 33rd United States Colored Troops. The 33rd was a regiment of former slaves. Taylor lived with the regiment. She taught the soldiers how to read and write. She nursed the wounded and continued working as a nurse for the next 4 years. Woman doctor in the war. Dr. Mary Edwards Walker was the first woman doctor to serve in the Union Army. She was later appointed as a medical officer. She was captured by the Confederates in 1864 and spent 4 months in prison. After the war, she was given the Congressional Medal of Honor, the country's highest military award. She was the first woman ever to receive it. Spies. Some women became spies for the North or for the South. They found out the enemy's important secrets and told these secrets to leaders on their own side. Some women were couriers or people who carried messages across enemy lines. Rose O'Neal Greenhow. Rose O'Neal Greenhow had many important friends in Washington, D.C., so she was able to get information from them secretly. She then told the Confederate Army what information she learned. Elizabeth Van Lew. Elizabeth Van Lew was a Southerner who spied for the North. She pretended to bring gifts to Union prisoners in Richmond, Virginia. Actually, the prisoners gave her information. They sometimes used a code she invented. Soldiers. At least 400 women dressed as men and joined the armies of the North and the South. Some joined to be with their husbands or brothers. Many served because they strongly believed in their side's cause. Others went just for the adventure. Most of these women soldiers were found out only when they became ill or wounded. Teachers. When Union soldiers entered the South, enslaved people followed them. Besides wanting to be free, the enslaved people also needed food, shelter, jobs, and medical care. They also wanted to learn. Northern men and women came south to help them, and many of the women became teachers. Charlotte Forten. Charlotte Forten, a free African American, had a good education and joined the abolitionist movement. She became a teacher and wanted to help enslaved people. She taught on St. Helena Island, South Carolina.